This is CBC Here and Now.
Right now, landings are being affected big time. The catch rates just dropped off everywhere.
Weathering the storm.
The local crab fishery contends with the environment and the economics.
It's like February in June. A lot of vessels can't get out at all because the window to fish is not there.
Every second day in May, like there've been gale warnings. Like, you know, you get one good day, then the next 2 or 3 days is blowing.
If the price wasn't there, everyone would be in pretty rough shape.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Debbie Cooper.
And I'm Anthony Germain. The crab fishery, it's a savior for many small communities.
But there are signs of trouble on the seabed where they're found. And this year, there are problems on the surface thanks to Mother Nature.
Here Now's Terry Roberts reports from Port de Grave.
Life on the ocean's edge. Picturesque, peaceful, but these images are deceiving. Fishermen in pursuit of snow crab this year are more likely to face scenes like this. Punishing winds, giant waves, like trying to work while riding a roller coaster.
You get one good day, then the next 2 or 3 days is blowing. Like here today, it looks pretty peaceful, whereas yesterday it was like 7-meter seas.
This year we're seeing just regular systems coming through with 45, 55 knots, and it's happening on a weekly basis.
The smaller inshore fleet, pinned to the wharf, missing valuable fishing time in Conception Bay.
You need 2 or 3 days of good weather to catch your product, and it's just not there.
And when the smaller boats do get out, the landings have been low.
A lot of boats are coming in with 5, 6, and 7, and 8,000 in the closer areas. And last year, like, you'd be coming in with 8 and 10,000. So, like, she's really down.
It's not just rough conditions like this. It's cold, slime-filled water, making the crab lazy, not feeding, not climbing in baited pots.
When those pots come up out of the water, like they're just like a brin bag, just totally covered with mud. Every year it happens, but it don't usually last long. We're just hoping that it is the dirty water and it's not the resource down.
And that's the question. Just how healthy are crab stocks? DFO scientists are worried, and that's resulted in big quota cuts.
Last year we took 20% decrease, and the year before was about 20%.
But there is an upside.
That's close to $8 we'll get for that one crab.
Record prices.
If the price wasn't there, everyone would be in pretty rough shape.
Nerves are a little frayed. Many harvesters have borrowed big money to buy extra licenses. If quota cuts continue and markets soften in a few years, the industry itself could face a storm of bankruptcies.
It could be a lot worse than when the moratorium was called, because people are so in debt with buying up these licenses.
But the Pettin boys are optimists, generational fishermen.
Our areas to fish.
Big modern boats, offshore quotas, professional crab catchers. Lindsay Pettin not sure why the scientists are so worried.
We're still getting cuts, even though our catch rates are above what we were getting back, say, in the 90s.
There's no one down saying, boys, gone, gone, gone. Like, everyone seems to be, you know, they're pretty comfortable that the crab's still going to be there when the water conditions are right.
That's good news for the thousands who depend on crab. But no matter what the big picture is for the industry, if nature doesn't soon cooperate, 2018 will be a rough season. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Port de Grave.
I certainly saw in Terry's report those massive waves.
Yeah,
Strong.
very, very windy, and we've been talking about those conditions over several weeks, really.
For sure. System after system after system tracking through the region, and more of the same over the next handful of days, for sure. As we look at the weather map, you can see a system that's moving through the region right now, and we don't have to look far to the west to see the next one brewing. It's rolling into the Hudson Bay region right now, northern Ontario, and that is on the menu for the Friday-Saturday time period for us. So we get rid of one, we have a brief break, and then another one moves in. Now, that break that we're going to be seeing for tonight is setting up a frost advisory for Newfoundland. Now, again, anything that's in the ground, it's been in the ground for a while, is either very protected thanks to the nourishment of the gardeners, or it's long dead because it's had no chance with this last week or so. But also a frost advisory in effect for Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And as Anthony and Debbie will tell you in a few minutes, already bad news there as the crops were hit hard in the valley over the last couple of days. Now, in terms of our weather, again, the system will depart, and we are looking at, although a cool start with those frost advisories in place, a pretty bright looking Thursday, and temperatures rebounding quite nicely. And I'll talk about those forecast details in just a few minutes. Debbie.
Putting used needles in their place. The City of St. John's is hoping drug users will avail of these new needle drop boxes in the city. I'll tell you more about it coming up.
The RCMP have called for an external investigation after a car crashed into a house in Upper Island Cove. The Major Crimes Unit is now investigating that crash, but it's the response from the Bay Roberts Detachment that an outside investigator will look at. As Here Now's Ryan Cook explains, the officers showed up to find a familiar face behind the wheel.
Well, there used to be a fence here along this property in Upper Island Cove. That wasn't until Friday afternoon, when a car came down this street, plowed through the fence, struck the house right here, and went on into a pole over here, splintering the pole. An RCMP officer responded from the Bay Roberts Detachment after a call about a suspected impaired driver causing a crash. However, when he got here, he realized the driver was his son. Now, police say that's the point where he called for a second officer to come and take over the investigation. However, the homeowner says when he arrived home, the first officer was still on the scene. Knowing the connection between the driver and the officer, he requested to speak with the second officer. Now, the homeowner has some concerns about what happened before he got here. He says when he arrived on scene, he spotted the suspect's vehicle parked in a driveway a few hundred feet away. Now, police confirmed that nobody was arrested at the scene, but they cannot say whether or not the driver left in his own vehicle. They can confirm, however, that the investigating officer is now responding to a superior outside of the Bay Roberts Detachment, and that all aspects of this incident are under investigation. Ryan Cook, CBC News, Upper Island Cove.
Tonight we return to a story that we first brought you in March.
Jessica Hepner vanished from St. John's 3 years ago. Her disappearance flew under the radar until it was profiled in a CBC series called Last Seen.
Ariana Kellen brought us that story, and she's here with us once again tonight. Ariana.
Well, as you said, Jessica Hepner's quiet disappearance went mostly unnoticed, but now her mother wants to change that. If you're in St. John's tonight, you may see these posters around. Jessica Hepner's mother arrived last week from Ontario. She wanted to ask questions, meet with police, and plaster these posters everywhere. She wants to find her daughter, who today would be 24 years old. Now, this was Hepner getting on a plane to St. John's in May of 2015. She arrived on the 25th and went to the Sheraton Hotel. Why she came to St. John's is unknown, but Hepner was in the sex trade. Surveillance showed her shopping in the city, and police know she was in the Topsail Road area, then nothing. 4 days later, this man, Norbert Kaza, called police. He reported her missing but wouldn't give an official interview and said he was leaving the country. Now, CBC News has learned that this Polish man is living outside London, England, in Surrey. This has been confirmed by the Surrey police, who passed the information on to the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary earlier this year. We've also made contact with Kaza's former roommate in the UK, who called police earlier this year. He claims that when he approached Kaza about Jessica Hepner, Kaza denied even knowing her. Now, the RNC are left with just these pieces of evidence: 2 suitcases filled with Jessica Hepner's clothes, a laptop, and her ID cards, all left behind in her hotel room 3 years ago. The RNC says they are following up on any tips that they do receive, and tonight, police and Hepner's mother are appealing for anyone with information to come forward. Debbie?
Thanks so much, Ariana. Now to the West Coast, where a teen is on trial facing charges of sexual assault. The allegations shook a local high school last winter. Students held a silent protest when the accused was allowed back on school grounds. Today, one of 3 trials he's facing is underway. Here Now's Colleen Connors brings us this story from Stephenville.
Today is day 2 of the trial for the male teen here at the courthouse in Stephenville. Although no students are protesting outside like they were this winter at the school, you can certainly feel a tension in the air in the courtroom today, and that tension and discomfort comes from both sides of the family. The alleged accuser, the male teen's family, along with the family of the alleged victim. There's a lot of discomfort in that courtroom today. Now, the alleged teen's lawyer, Mark Mills, cross-examined the alleged victim today and asked about holes in her story from yesterday when she was talking about the non-consensual sex. He says there were some holes in the story, some missing parts, saying that there's a lot of discussion on social media, parts that she remembered and parts that she did not. Mills also questioned her wording around the non-consensual sex and asked if she could feel that she could say no during the ordeal. And she says she wasn't sure if she could say no, that she was afraid that she may be hurt. And that's what she said in court today. Now, this all goes back to when these students attended Stephenville High School, and the alleged male, when all of this first came out, went back to class, and that had a lot of students upset at the school, enough to protest. And the Newfoundland English School District did get involved at the time, saying that they could not remove him from the school property back in February. Now, but the provincial government has changed the school act since then. They changed it just last month to ensure a safer environment for all students and teachers at that school. Now, Janice Kennedy, who advocates for women's rights in this area, says that more than that school act, more than that needs to be done.
I think it's a first start, but I think we need to go even further. What this shows us is that we need to look at our education curriculum, particularly when we talk about consent when it comes to sex, as well as our sex ed in general. I mean, we need to look at what Ontario's doing. They're really the leader in the country right now, talking about sex ed starting in kindergarten. And that's what we need to adopt, because young men and women need to learn what is consent.
The male youth involved here has a full day of trial again tomorrow at the courthouse in Stephenville, and he has 2 more trials involving sexual assault allegations later in the summer, and he has pled not guilty to all charges of sexual assault. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Stephenville.
A brand new MRI scanner at Eastern Health is already improving patient care. The 3 Tesla MRI, or 3T MRI, was unveiled today at the Health Sciences Centre. MRI scans help diagnose many illnesses, cancers and neurological conditions, for example. But the 3T MRI provides higher quality images with much more detail. It's also more efficient. It captures the images very quickly, and that cuts down on examination times. And it's more spacious and has a number of built-in features to help patients' anxiety. Sam Tilley has multiple sclerosis, and she says the machine has changed her life.
It's not just a machine. It's ultimately determines somebody's life. Without it, I would be a lot further along in my illness if I did not have that technology available.
Turning now to the story from Ontario. It is the final day of campaigning in the Ontario election campaign, and it's a key one for different reasons for all 3 main party leaders.
Of course, it's emotional. You know, there will be lots of emotional moments today and tomorrow, for sure.
Liberal leader Kathleen Wynne describing her feelings and what she's conceded will be her last day as premier. Doug Ford and his progressive Conservatives are poised to replace her based on many of the polls. He's spending the last day doing last-minute events, trying to convince voters that he's the one who will be the change premier. And NDP leader Andrea Horwath is courting undecided voters in several ridings where her party hopes to pick up seats. All 3 leaders are spending at least part of their final day in the vote-rich seats in and around Toronto.
A late spring frost has crushed hopes in Nova Scotia's wine country. Vineyard owners say that the unexpected cold snap has devastated this year's crop.
Looking at a 50% reduction in what our production would normally be.
Temperatures fell from the high 20s to -3 over the weekend. Growers say the ruined crop will likely mean higher prices for a bottle of wine next year. Back in this province now, foodies and barbecue lovers may be disappointed to hear that Rib Fest in St. John's this summer isn't going to happen after all. Sure, you can almost smell how delicious that is. The organizer of the barbecue competition, Mighty Quinton Promotions, has withdrawn its request for the event. Now, there was a proposal with the city to have the 4-day food festival in Churchill Park, but some residents were opposed, saying the traffic, litter and noise just weren't welcome in their neighborhood. Right now, the company is keeping tight-lipped about the future of Ribfest here in the province.
This is Tori, but make no mistake, she's more than just a cute face. One group in St. John's hopes that one day she'll save lives.
You're not training these dogs. These dogs are just growing with people who need them.
That story's coming up on Here and Now.
Welcome back to Here and Now. Another sign that the opioid crisis has hit St. John's, more needles. And now the city hopes to reduce the number of used needles that are tossed on the ground by adding nearly 24 drop boxes around the city. Here and Now's Carolyn Stokes has the details.
If you like to go for a stroll around Kitty Vitty Lake, you may notice this new addition to the landscape. It looks a little bit like a mailbox, but it's actually put here for drug users to dispose of their used needles. And the city of St. John's hopes that the more needles that go in here, the fewer will end up on the ground.
5 years ago, we were giving out 300,000 needles a year. This year, we hit 1 million needles.
It's a growing problem. More needles, more mess. In some areas of the city, dirty needles are tossed on the ground like cigarette butts. By schools and parks, places where children could be playing. Now the city and province are cost-sharing a $6,000 pilot project to install dozens of needle drop boxes. There's now a large kiosk at Kitivity Lake and near Tessier Place. But there will also be 20 more small containers, like this one, built by students at the College of the North Atlantic.
That we're looking at trying to place strategically around the city where we've had issues come up in the past.
It's one thing to install the containers, but how will they convince drug addicts to actually use them?
Discretion is one of the things that we've considered with the locations because we understand that people don't want a spotlight on them when they're utilizing these containers.
Well, I think the key to the program as we move into the next phase is the communication between the community groups and their clients in how we make sure that they're utilized to the best of our ability. This is not going to solve the problem, but it's a step forward.
Their hope is others will follow, and the project is picked up by cities and towns around the province. Carolyn Stokes, CBC News, St. John's.
There's a group in St. John's that's hoping to save more lives. Pausology started last year as a not-for-profit with a focus on psychiatric service dogs. As Here Now's Ariana Kelland reports, dogs may be the best medicine.
In a backyard in St. John's, this golden retriever pup is getting a workout. But this isn't just play. She's training for work.
Hi, this is Tori. She's 7 months old. And so Tori's been through her socialization stage. So we've had her all around town and basically getting accustomed to all the sights and sounds.
Tori will one day help people like her namesake, Victoria Best, a woman with a kind heart, a love of dogs, and a mental illness that she couldn't battle any longer.
There's always a reminder of why we do the work we do. Is ultimately, it sounds so bravado, but to save people's lives. I mean, that's what these dogs do at the end of the day.
And Esther Vardy would know.
It was about just a little over a year ago that I attempted suicide myself, and Gabe was there. He was such a baby, 3 months old at the time, and no training, obviously, at that age. That night, when I was in major crisis, and I happened to be alone, and it wasn't something that we ever anticipated, and he was there, and he just kept looking and sort of at me. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have stayed connected to reality long enough to know that what was happening was a crisis, psychosis, and I needed to get some help as opposed to follow through with this plan that I thought was the best idea at the time.
Esther Vardy and her husband started Pausology last year. They believe dogs have the power to help and to heal.
Something about a dog specifically that just connects with not just any human, but they always pick a human who becomes the center of their world. And then that person experiences stuff that they didn't think, like emotions or connections that they didn't think were possible.
Breaking down tough exteriors allows people like Esther to connect and help people. Within the last 6 months, she has made 3 suicide interventions. They were people who reached out to her organization. But bringing in a specialized pup like Tori costs money. And over 300 people from all over North America have contacted the organization looking for a mental health service dog. So now Pausology is trying to think like a business. Last month, it was awarded a cash prize at Memorial University's Social Innovation Challenge to keep up their work.
I would like to see Pausology as the go-to mental health organization in Canada for psychiatric service dogs. I think it has the potential to do that. There's no other organization in the country that does it.
Gabe and Tori are the first steps and are proof that sometimes dogs are the answer. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
You're looking at a rare sight, anglers on the Avalon Peninsula. I'll tell you about the lengths they went to get their salmon licenses, which right now is not very easy.
Welcome back, everyone. And Ryan was saying earlier in the program, frost warning.
Yeah. I mean, so anything planted?
No.
No. I mean, people have green thumbs, but right now they're kind of blue, right? So
Right.
It's not really working too well.
But I've always heard, in our neck of the woods anyway, don't plant anything susceptible to frost until after the middle of June.
Yeah, mid-June seems to be what everybody says around here. Environment Canada, though, does issue a frost advisory starting June 1st if there is a potential for frost, just in case. Now, I, again, include this map because for all of you wine connoisseurs out there, in case you missed it earlier, Anthony was talking about the damage to the crops there in the valley, up to 50% in some farms. So
you see, there's no point in you going to Halifax. There's no wine for you.
well, there's still some left, and I'll make sure to send any that I get your way, okay? So frost advisories in effect. Not good news, obviously, for Nova Scotia and the valley and those vineyards. And obviously not good news for anybody that's trying to get some plants in the ground. That said, we kind of bottom out temperature-wise tonight, and then we're going to be rebounding over the next few days. We've got some warmer temperatures and even some sunshine. So if you're like our switcher director, Rod Dobbin, whose garage sounds like it's full of plants waiting to get out in the garden, next couple days will be good for hardening off. Bring them out, let them get a little bit of sunshine, but you want to make sure you put them back in at night, especially with temperatures like that. 2 degrees right now in St. John's. Winds are from the north, sustained at 30, so it feels raw. It's been just a raw day. Not so bad for western central parts of Newfoundland. Still a couple of showers kicking around. We do have this area of high pressure that's going to be moving in, bringing us a little bit of sunshine, but our next system is on the way, which is coming in from the west. And you can see as we move through tonight, skies will clear. There are those temperatures that are going to be very near the freezing mark to start the day tomorrow. Best chance will be low-lying areas of central. Winds are going to be generally light, not ruling out the risk of frost again anywhere across the island and into Labrador as well. No frost advisories issued in Labrador this time of year. Now, as we roll through into the afternoon, temperatures rebounding quite nicely. Inland areas will be the best chance of getting into that 14 to 15 degree range. Not ruling it out on the Avalon, even in the metro region, but the winds are going to be light enough that there will be a bit of a sea breeze. So closer to the high single digits along the coast. And if you're standing at Cape Spear, well, even cooler than that, right in those onshore winds. Into Labrador, looking at, again, double-digit potential in the south, single digits in the north, winds generally light. And into the Friday time period, here comes that next system. Lab West first, with some periods of rain up into Happy Valley, Goose Bay Friday afternoon. Western parts of Newfoundland into the mix, certainly before supper time. Some of those showers starting to creep in. Temperatures, though, as I said, mild ahead of this system. Should get to 17, 18 degrees for St. John's into Central. Very nice day, the nicest day in quite some time. Unfortunately, as we roll into the weekend, this system does track through, and it does look like a wet Saturday on the way with some rain for the Avalon and all across the region, but I think the eastern parts of Newfoundland will be wettest on Saturday. Lingering showers for west into central. Starting to brighten up, though, in Labrador, and that is the clearing trend that will move across the province and make for a brighter Sunday, and we'll have those details coming up for you with your long-range forecast in just a few minutes. Anthony.
Thank you, Ryan. Well, frustrated salmon anglers on the Avalon Peninsula and elsewhere are still waiting for the province to deliver licenses almost a week after the season should have started. They've only been distributed on the west coast. 2 unhappy but keen anglers from the Holyrood area went the extra mile, literally, to get their hands on some licenses, and I met up with them at a secret location. Well, I'm here with 2 Johnnies who are very keen anglers. So tell me, what did you do to get your licenses?
It was a bit random, but Johnny texted me yesterday and said, yeah, do you want to go to Bishop's Falls? Salmon fishing's open. And I said, sure, why not?
That's a bit of a hike, though, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, when you love something dearly, there's no such thing as distance to go get a license. I mean, there's no sign of license around here, and it doesn't look like there's going to be anything anytime soon, so we figured it'd be a good decision to go out there and get some licenses.
All right, so you guys, you finished work at 5 p.m.
Yep.
Tell me about the drive.
Well, it was pretty good going out. We could see most of the way. We got there around 10 o'clock or so, but on the way back, we took our time, did around 80 or 90 around the lookout for moose. We got back around 2 o'clock. There was no stopping. We went and got our gear ready. We didn't sleep. We headed right for the river and waited for daylight.
And not only did you go right to the river, but you actually had some luck, right?
Yeah, actually we both released a fish each, so I mean we've seen a couple fish. So I mean it's kind of sad that we can't have license here on the Avalon when there is of course fish in our rivers. So like we did have a bit of luck, and there definitely should be a license around here now.
So if you'd actually kept that fish, your season be over?
Technically yes, but not over for us.
All right, now what would possess two guys to drive 8 hours just to get a license to go fishing?
I just love the sport so much. Like, it's truly a passion. So first day we said guaranteed we're going up the up to the falls after a fish.
All right, and you've got 2 fish since too, right?
Yeah, we both released 2 fish, so I mean it's working out pretty good, but there should be licenses so everyone else can get out and enjoy it. I mean, there is fish in the rivers. I mean, it's still early, there's not a lot of fish, but there's enough that people should be able to go fishing. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, there are a lot of anglers who are quite upset about the fact that there's no license on the Avalon. I think there are more anglers from the Avalon than the rest of the island.
Yep.
What do you think about the whole delay?
It's very unprofessional in my opinion. To be honest with you, a lot of people that are handling it have no knowledge on salmon fishing at all or anything about it. Some of the rules that they're coming out with, such as the 10 fish release, I don't agree with it personally. I mean, 3 a day was fine. It was fair for DFO to cut back to 1 tag and then take 1 fish out as well. 3 a day definitely would have been fine with us. But I mean, it's not fair to anglers. Like you said, a lot of people don't have the time like we did to go out to Bishop Falls and then come all the way back again. And to distribute them on the West Coast and Central, and then not to put it on the Avalon, it's just totally not fair at us. We knew those fish were around. I've been doing some scouting even before the season started. They always say there's more to fishing than just the actual fishing itself. I mean, water's high, there's bait in the bays, capelin, stuff like that. There's no reason why the fish wouldn't be here already.
All right, last question for both of you Johnnies. Which one of you is the better angler?
That's hard to say. That's
a bad question to ask here.
Listen, guys, thanks a lot, and tight lines.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
All right, having some fun.
They are keeners.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, the one thing they did say, the good thing about if there is a good thing about not having that many licenses available, none, in fact, in the Avalon, is that they're the only people on the river, so they're the first people to get there, so they think, that might be the reason they've been so successful getting some fish. Yeah.
As you said, tight lines.
Yeah.
Are you sitting down right now? If you are, you might want to get up and do a little moving during our commercial break.
According to a new study at Memorial University, there may be a connection between sitting too long and having a bad back.
Welcome back to Here and Now. Well, this next story is about something we all do, sit. And some of us do it for hours a day.
Yeah, perhaps too long, too, for some of us. Now, at Memorial University, some researchers are conducting a study that they hope will determine if sitting too long is bad for your back. Here and Now's Glenn Payette popped in to the lab to take a look.
We weren't designed to sit for long periods of time.
All that will make sense in a moment. This is part of the CBC newsroom in St. John's. Some of the people in here sit for long periods of time every day. People who work on the web, producers, associate producers, who don't get out much. And with more and more people sitting longer because of their jobs, some researchers at MUN have gotten very interested in the back.
This is basic science research that's going to give us more, better understanding of how the back works, how injuries might happen, and if we can understand that, we can have a better job of preventing injuries in the first place, coming up with better guidelines on how long someone should sit, for example.
It's the how long someone should sit that is at the heart of this study.
We're interested in understanding more about how back injuries happen, the mechanism of injury. So what we have going on is a study that is looking at whether or not sitting for long periods of time, in this case we're doing 2 hours, if that changes how the muscles turn on and function normally in the back.
That's why the subject is in a harness leaning forward. She's attached to a cable, and when she doesn't expect it, the cable is detached.
We're monitoring the muscle activity of 6 low back muscles, and we're also monitoring the position of the spine and the torso with the markers on the chest.
When her back muscles fire, it looks like this on the monitor, a reflex action.
Similar to going to the doctor and having them check a reflex in your knee by hitting them. So the reflexes, or the way muscles turn on without you even thinking about them, is the way that our body protects itself, and these are natural activities of the muscle that is really important when we're out and about so we don't hurt ourselves.
After what they call the drop and the initial reading, the subject then moves over and sits at a normal workstation for 2 hours and notes any pain they are having. Then after the 2 hours, it's back to the harness to see if the back muscles fire the way they should to protect the back.
Most people are sitting for most of their workday, and the question is does sitting for long periods of time change how our back would normally function and maybe make us at more risk for hurting ourselves?
The research may help determine why, after sitting for a long time, you can simply hurt yourself by picking up a pencil. The test subject you've been seeing is Sarah Mackey. Mackey is studying kinesiology, how the body moves. The back study is her work term. And how's that drop feel?
It doesn't hurt at all. It's just your back automatically pulls you back up, so it doesn't hurt or pull or anything.
Now, have you sat in the chair for 2 hours as part of this already?
Twice.
And
yeah.
What's it like when you get up?
The whole time you really want to get up, but when you stand up, it's a relief. It's definitely a relief.
And have you hurt yourself yet?
No, not yet.
Remember this and this? Ryan Green is doing his Master's of Science. This study is part of his thesis. Obviously in the lab here, we're looking at somebody who's sitting at a desk for 2 hours, but who else could this apply to?
This might also apply to other or other professions, such as like truck drivers or pilots, things like that, other professions which involve prolonged sitting.
They hope to have the data collected by the end of July with the results of the research and some practical advice ready to present at a conference of the Canadian Society of Biomechanics this August in Halifax. Glenn Payette, CBC News, St. John's.
It does look like that hurts, even though it doesn't. Now I finally figured out something.
What's that?
This is why you've made me stand ever since I got here, right? It's actually good for us.
It is good for us. And it's interesting that some workplaces, including ours, are installing some of the stand-up desks, so you can sit, and after a while when you feel like you need to stand, up it goes. So people are thinking about it these days.
No question.
Anthony, je vous présente donc la tarte de Terre-Neuve.
Ah, the French! Stay tuned to Here and Now. I've got a great cooking competition to tell you about.
Time to meet our young athlete of the day. Georgia Cameron is 12 and is from Mount Pearl. She is a member of Team Current with Coastal Wave Elite Cheerleading.
And they'll be heading to the Nationals in Niagara Falls. Georgia is also a defensive player with Capital Mitsubishi in the Mount Pearl Blades Pee Wee division.
Congratulations, Georgia, on being today's Young Athlete of the Day.
Remember, it wasn't that long ago, Zach Gowdy did a story about that kind of cheerleading, and it is a workout. So
very demanding.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, you need a workout to stay warm if you are heading out in eastern Newfoundland. Two right now with the wind, and you can see with those little arrows rolling around that low, which is just to the east, right in from the north of those winds. So it is raw out there this evening. Now that low will depart. Our next system off to the west is going to be moving in for the weekend, but we will see some sunshine in the mix, and let's time it out for you. There goes our system. Area of high pressure moving in. I do think clouds dominate at times tomorrow over the Avalon Peninsula. That system just off to our east and south, but far enough that I don't think we'll see anything in the way of showers, maybe a couple of spits possible, but overall it is going to be some sun breaks in the mix and a dry day. Now into the evening, for Thursday, our next system rolls into Labrador City and then Happy Valley Goose Bay into Friday afternoon, as well as western parts of Newfoundland. We're staying dry in central and the east until Friday evening and into Saturday morning. Saturday will be most damp over eastern Newfoundland with some lingering showers over the west and into central. Gradual clearing Saturday afternoon from west to east across the island. Labrador will stay quite unsettled on Saturday and even into Sunday. Yes, wet flurry chances certainly Saturday night into Sunday once again for Labrador. For Newfoundland, I think Sunday is overall a dry day. We are talking about maybe a bit of cloud cover and a possibility of a shower Sunday night into Monday as that system moves out. And then our next system hot on its heels, and it appears that will roll in for Tuesday. So the active pattern continues. No long stretch here of an area of high pressure settling in and keeping things nice and bright. Though Sunday is certainly something to bank on right now as a day that looks pretty good. Those highs for Tuesday and Wednesday in western parts of Newfoundland look very similar in the 10 to 12, 13 degree range. I'll make sure I include those for tomorrow. Now as we look again, Saturday the dampest day, Sunday the brightest day of the weekend, but Friday certainly the pick of the next 7. Into Labrador, we're talking about single-digit temperatures from Saturday, Sunday, and into the weekend, unfortunately. Saturday, Sunday, and into next week, unfortunately, with some shower chances in the mix as well. Far from where we should be for this time of year, but we'll bank on some warmer temperatures beyond 7. Always light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. Just have to look really, really hard. Debbie and Anthony.
We're looking. Thanks, Ryan. Well, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon wants to lure some chefs from our province for a new all-expense-paid competition.
Yeah, and the challenge, make a French gourmet 3-course meal in 5 hours and win over the judges. Chef Vincent Le Coadic whips up a chocolatey French dessert for discerning foodies. Decadent and delicious. Desserts aren't his only specialty. He's one of the organizers of a 3-course culinary competition, the Concours Culinaire 2018. The aim is to get chefs from France, Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Maritime provinces to duke it out this September in a 2-day culinary battle. And the deadline for choosing the Newfoundland rep is in 10 days.
Alors, on organise un concours culinaire international donc, à Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon. Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon étant dans les maritimes du Canada, nous avons décidé de promouvoir les aliments sur l'archipel. Le but, c'est de réunir des professionnels, des amoureux de la cuisine, à réaliser un concours en 2 parties. Les invités, ce sont des gens de Terre-Neuve, ce sont des gens de Halifax, de tous les maritimes, et on aura des gens de Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon aussi. Oui. Nous avons des meilleurs ouvriers de France, Jean-Marc Taché et Jean-Philippe Rigolo. Jean-Philippe Rigolo, il est non seulement meilleur ouvrier de France, mais il est aussi champion du monde de dessert, chocolat et pâtisserie.
Oui, mais est-ce que vous pensez que c'est possible que quelqu'un de Terre-Neuve ou Saint-Pierre peut les battre?
Oui, absolument.
Oui. Ah oui.
C'est le challenge.
Oui. Well, lobster isn't one of the ingredients at this culinary competition in St. Pierre, but there are many, many others. Rory McPherson has a role in deciding who will go there from Newfoundland. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for coming to the Wilds.
So what's your sense of this competition in St. Pierre?
Well, this competition looks to be very old school, and like one that I would have entered probably when I started my career, where, you know, everyone's going to be in chef whites, jackets, hats. You get the items well in advance. You got a specific recipe, so every chef will be doing the same recipes. Is how they determine how they're going to do that and what they're going to do to put their own specific flair to it.
Right, and Chef Vincent says that they're going to use local ingredients, halibut, deer, which they have in St. Pierre, and
baked apples, I do believe.
So
and
local
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah, it's local
right?
stuff they can get.
So how does a chef, whether they're from Newfoundland or France or Nova Scotia, how do they stand out in a competition like this?
Well, you know, it all comes down to organization, professionalism, you know, going back to their roots in regards to, you know, when they're working, you know, being clean, neat, organized. Everything will have a determining factor in regards to the results.
For those chefs who might be interested in a competition like this, what can this actually give them?
As with any competition, generally, I was on a competition called Chop Canada. It's
Yeah.
just personal satisfaction at the end of the day. You know, people don't need to do it for their careers, but it's always good to get out there and test your skills against others. And there's going to be an international field here. I mean, there's no lightweights going. It's going to be hardcore competition.
So some bragging rights too.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about.
And you don't have to cook, you're going to be a judge.
Yes, Vincent reached out to me, and what I did, I gave him a list of names of chefs. I phoned around and I asked people who I know who would like that type of competition, because not all chefs would dig that type of a venue. So I asked the people who I thought, and I submitted their names, and again, it was up to Vincent and them to select who was going or who is going.
And the organizers in St. Pierre, they're paying for the travel, the accommodations of all the chefs, so there is a bit of fun involved in all this, apart from the work, right?
Absolutely, and again, it is a foreign country, so again, a lot of people would jump at the opportunity.
All right. Well, listen, Rory McPherson, appreciate your time, and hope you have fun in St. Pierre. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, Anthony, between Rory's lobster and Vincent's desserts, I'm hungry looking at that.
I know. Whenever we have a food item at this time of year now, it starts to hear the old stomach growling. Now, if you are a chef and you think you're up to le challenge, as Vincent called it, the deadline is June the 15th, and you can send them an email at this address, concours-culinaire2018@outlook.fr.
And if you happen to be in St. Pierre this September, you can buy tickets to try out these French delicacies.
Road trip.
Road trip.
Oh dear. Well, you've heard of milking cows, but how about milking starfish? The creatures leak a fluid that's in high demand in the cosmetics industry, and a former fisherman found a way to gently squeeze some cash out of their star power. Brian Higgins has that story in Tracadie, Prince Edward Island.
Stephen Stewart is not the kind of guy to hold a grudge. Sure, this former mussel fisherman could hate starfish. Instead, he treats them with loving kindness.
They take a little bit of fluid out of them, they go back out in the water. It's only a matter of a few days and they're back 100% again.
Stewart is putting the gentle squeeze on these 5-armed echinoderms. He travels wharf to wharf on PEI and pays mussel fishermen 65 cents apiece for every live starfish they bring him. Turns out the cosmetics industry is after their precious bodily fluids.
If they lose an arm, they grow a new one. So it's all about the regeneration fluid that's inside the starfish.
Stewart is former owner of a mussel plant. He is now sole supplier to Innovactive, a Quebec company that is using starfish fluid in cosmetics. The humane handling process is a big part of the product's appeal. This equipment was designed by the Quebec Cosmetic Company. The belts here really don't squeeze the starfish, they just hold it upright and let it drip all on its own. Stewart hopes to process up to 100,000 starfish this year. He's hired on some hands to help, including biology students from the local college.
So it's a good experience for me to know that, starfish has a regenerative capability.
The starfish fluid is triple filtered, then frozen before it's shipped to Quebec. The starfish get a free ride back to sea. This retired fisherman gets a new lease on life. Do you use the product personally?
Well, I'm like 80 years old.
Brian Higgins, CBC News, Tracadie.
I think we'll have to get some of those drops. Anyway, we're going to turn now to a very serious story in international news. Officials in Guatemala say the conditions are extremely critical as the Fuego volcano continues to explode, sending ash plumes high into the sky. The pyroclastic flow, a mix of ash, rock, and gas, is streaming down the volcano, threatening villages in the southeast. Towns are covered in thick ash. The volcano has now killed at least 75 people. Hundreds of others are missing. Search teams continue to dig in the hopes of finding survivors. Fuego began erupting on Sunday with a second explosion on Tuesday.
Meanwhile, in Hawaii, the Kilauea volcano continues to spread its burning lava right across the Big Island. Hundreds of homes have been swallowed by the slow-moving flow. The island's resort vacation land has been evacuated as lava breached the resort. The community of Kapoho Bay, once a serene neighborhood by the water, is now completely filled with a river of molten rock. And the Civil Defense Authority is warning that a nasty mix of haze and lava is sending poison hydrochloric acid into the air. All residents have been ordered out of the area.
Well, our viewer picture of the day, only in Newfoundland. Waves and ice. Any guesses?
I'd just like to be there to see it. That's a gorgeous picture. There's an island off in the far right. Not sure, Ryan.
We'll reveal after the break.
Welcome back, everyone. A Taiwanese cargo ship that lost dozens of containers during a storm last Thursday has finally docked in Sydney, Australia.
And you'll see many more containers about what you're going to see are precariously hanging off this ship once we get these up, while others are mangled or crushed.
A really complicated game of Jenga now. We can't lift the wrong box and the whole lot come tumbling down.
The ship was en route from Taiwan to Sydney last week when it hit massive swells off the coast.
83 containers were lost at sea, another 30 damaged. A trail of debris running hundreds of kilometers from the lost containers has begun washing up on pristine beaches.
The Taiwanese shipping company Yang has apologized for the incident, and an investigation is underway, and insurance is covering the cost of the cleanup. But there are concerns that the debris, which includes everything from car parts and diapers to potato chips and plastic bottles, that could endanger animals and sea life in the area.
Oh my goodness.
What a mess.
What a mess indeed. You know,
talking about those winds.
For sure.
It's not just here.
Okay, viewer picture of the day. It is from Change Islands, and a beautiful shot. Hopefully I have it loaded in to see it again. Hopefully I do, and yes,
Whoa.
there it is. Woo! Make myself sweat there. Jennifer Logan was who took this awesome picture, and you're only going to see that in Newfoundland.
It is spectacular.
Blue and the ground and the white. Great picture, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Jennifer Logan from Change Islands. And maybe it'll draw some tourists out there, having seen that, or some of the locals, because we always love to see them.
Absolutely.
Never gets old.
You got to figure out a way to get people to send their pictures after you go. Not getting all this gold in Nova Scotia.
We'll talk.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for being with us, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.